In over 2,000 years of imperial China, only one woman openly used the highest title in the country. She was not called a queen, nor did she simply rule as the wife or mother of an emperor. Instead, she declared herself as the Emperor of China. Her name was Wu Zetian. She died more than 1,300 years ago, but even today, opinions about her are still divided. For some, she was a wise and capable leader who fought against a male-dominated system. For others, she was a ruthless woman who was willing to eliminate even her own family to gain and keep power. For many centuries, the darker version of her story was the one repeatedly told. She was portrayed as power-hungry, deceitful, and merciless. There are old records who accused her of killing her own child, but there is a big problem with these stories. Many of the records about Wu Zetian were written by historians who lived after her time. Most of them were part of a system that believed only men should rule as emperor. In the tradition of ancient China, the emperor was considered the son of heaven, the man with the mandate from heaven to rule. So when a woman claimed that title, she didn't just take the throne. Instead, she also challenged a long-held belief about what place women have in government and society. Because of this, it's hard to know which stories about her are true and which ones were made up to ruin her name. What's clear is that Wu Zetian was not just an ordinary woman who suddenly came to power. Let's go and learn more about her story. She was born in 624 into a wealthy family. Her father was a government official and a successful businessman who supported the founding of the Tang dynasty. Because her family was well off, she learned to read, write, and study history, politics, and literature. This was not a common opportunity for many women during that time. When she was 14 years old, she was chosen to enter the imperial palace as a low-ranking concubine or mistress of Emperor Taizong. A concubine is a woman who lives in the palace and can become a companion of the emperor. But not all concubines are close to him. Each one has a clear rank, and many of them compete to be noticed. The imperial palace is very large. It is full of officials, guards, servants, the emperor's wives, and concubines. In a place like this, beauty alone is not enough. You need to know how to deal with people, understand politics, and avoid enemies. One wrong word can ruin your position. Wu was only given a low position at first. There is also no strong evidence that she was a favorite of Emperor Taizong. But while she was in the palace, she saw how the most powerful government in East Asia worked. She learned how the emperor chose officials, how decrees were made, and how powerful families fought for influence. When Emperor Taizong died in 649, it was expected that Wu's life in the palace would also come to an end. According to tradition, concubines who had no children with the deceased emperor were sent to the Buddhist court. There, they would shave their heads and live as nuns, and they usually never returned to the imperial court. Wu was also sent there, but she did not stay there for long. She returned to the palace during the reign of the new emperor, Gaozong, the son of Taizong. Not all the details about how this happened are clear. According to historical accounts, they may have already had a relationship even before Taizong died. It's also possible that she was brought back to the palace as part of the conflict between the wife and the favorite concubine of Gaozong. Whatever the real reason was, this is where her rapid rise began. She gained the trust of Emperor Gaozong and gradually rose in rank. They had children together, and her position inside the palace became even stronger. In 655, Gaozong removed Empress Wang and made Wu the new empress. At the same time, her other rival, Consort Xiao, also lost her power. This is where some of the cruelest stories about Wu began. According to later chroniclers, Wu's infant daughter died, and she blamed Empress Wang for it. Some historians say that Wu herself killed the child to ruin her rival, but there is no direct evidence about how the baby really died. The accounts that accused Wu were only written after the incident, and these may have been influenced by politics and strong opposition to a female leader. There's also a story that Empress Wang and Consort Xiao had their hands and feet cut off before they were placed in a container of wine. It's possible that Wu really did have her rivals killed. Politics in the imperial court was ruthless, and many male emperors also committed similar killings. But the most gruesome detail of the story is hard to prove actually happened. What's more certain is that she successfully removed the people who stood in the way of her rise. And when she became empress, she didn't stay quietly behind her husband. She actively took part in government. She read the reports, sat in on meetings, and gave advice to the emperor. Gaozong was often sick. As his condition worsened, more responsibilities were given to Wu. There were times when they faced the officials together. They were even called the two sages because they both participated in ruling. When Gaozong died in 683, Wu became Empress Dowager. This means she was the mother of the new emperor, and she could rule as regent while her son was not yet ready. But she didn't allow her sons, whom she put on the throne, to have real freedom. One of her sons was removed after only a short time because he allegedly tried to make his own decisions. He was replaced by another son who was easier to control. She had another son, Li Xian, who was once the crown prince. He was accused of treason, so he was exiled and later forced to commit suicide. It's not clear, but it is believed that Wu ordered his death. But the incident shows that she was willing to put the power of the state before her own family. In 690, Wu ended her rule from behind the throne. She deposed her son and declared herself emperor. And she replaced the Tang dynasty with her own Zhou dynasty. But it didn't last long either. What she did was a huge violation of the established system. For the first time, a woman was not just controlling the emperor. Instead, she herself was the emperor. She was over 60 years old when she took the title, but she had already held real power long before that. In total, she was an important force in the government for almost half a century. As Empress, Empress Dowager, Regent, and later as Emperor. She used harsh methods against her enemies. She had a secret police and encouraged people to report officials suspected of being against her. Many real and suspected enemies were investigated, exiled, or killed. So it's also not right to describe her as just an innocent victim of false history. Some parts of her rule were truly harsh, but the question is, was she really harsher than many male emperors? Or was her cruelty just more noticed because she was a woman? In the following centuries, stories of murder and betrayal almost overshadowed what she accomplished as a leader. But there's another kind of evidence that's slowly emerging from the ground. Around the former Tang capital of Chang'an, which is now part of modern Xi'an, many ancient tombs have been excavated. Inside these, archaeologists have found murals, clothing, jewelry, pottery figures, and inscribed tombstones. They show how people lived, what jobs did they do, how did they dress, and what was their position in society. There are figurines of musicians, servants, traders, soldiers, nobles, and foreigners who came to China through the vast trade routes. These show that Chang'an was a wealthy and international city. There were people who came from Central Asia and other regions who brought products, music, fashion, and new ideas. But there was something else remarkable about them. In some tomb art from the Tang period, you can see women riding horses, playing sports, and wearing clothes that were usually associated with men or with foreigners from Central Asia. This doesn't mean that men and women immediately became equal. Men still controlled most of the government and the family. Wealthy and noble women were also freer than ordinary citizens. But evidence shows that some women during the Tang period had more freedom of movement than we might think. They had a greater presence in public life, fashion, entertainment, and some areas of the court. Clothing and figurines alone cannot prove that Wu was the sole reason for all these changes. Some had already begun before she became emperor. But having a woman in the highest position may have given more space to women who wanted to go beyond the previous limitations. The story deepened even more when archaeologists found objects that had long only been read about in ancient texts. One of these is a very elegant phoenix crown from the Tang period. The phoenix is a symbol that has long been associated with female members of the imperial family. The crown is made up of gold, metal decorations, and many small gemstones and pearls. This is not a simple piece of jewelry. It shows the wealth, the skill of the artisans, and the high status of the woman who owned it. For many centuries, historians could only read about crowns like this. Now, there is a real object that can be studied, and as more evidence is unearthed, it becomes clearer that the old image of Wu Zetian as merely a cruel and greedy woman is not enough. This does not erase the people who died under her rule, but it shows that her story is much broader than the crimes attributed to her. To truly understand her impact on China, we need to look not only at what her enemies wrote, but also at the things left behind from her own time. The phoenix crown found in Li Kui's tomb is not just a luxurious ornament. It is also clear evidence of how wealthy Tang China was and how far-reaching its connections were with other parts of the world. Its craftsmanship is extremely detailed. The artisans used thin wires, tiny gold beads, pearls, mother-of-pearl, glass, and colorful stones. When you look at it as a whole, it resembles a bird with its tail spread open. The origin of the materials is even more important. There are stones and decorations that possibly came from Central Asia, India, Iran, and regions in the Indian Ocean. This means that some parts of this crown traveled thousands of kilometers before reaching Chang'an. Li Kui was from a distant branch of the Tang royal family, and he died several decades after the time of Wu Zetian. So the crown is not direct evidence of Wu's personal rule, but it shows the kind of wealthy, artistic, and internationally connected society that developed during the Tang period. When her tomb was open, it had not been disturbed by thieves. The jewelry that was once attached to her hair was still found there. Specialists carefully arranged the small pieces one by one to reconstruct the headdress. Li Kui was also holding a jade silkworm. The silkworm is important because it produces silk, one of China's most valuable products. Silk is used for clothing, as gifts for leaders, and for trade. Its value is very high because it is light, beautiful, and difficult to make. It is exchanged for horses, glass, gemstones, spices, metal, medicine, and other products from outside China. This is where Chang'an became important. It was not only the seat of government, it was also a major center of trade where products, people, religions, and ideas from different parts of Asia converged. The Silk Road was not a single road. It was a vast network of routes that connected China, Central Asia, India, Persia, the Middle East, and Europe. Along these routes, it wasn't just products that traveled. Merchants, monks, diplomats, artisans, musicians, and scholars also journeyed along them. They brought with them their food, music, clothing, beliefs, and technology. That's why Chang'an became one of the largest and the most international city of its time. In its markets, you could buy local silk and pottery, along with imported glass, spices, gemstones, metalwork, and food from distant places. You can also see this connection in the murals of foreign envoys visiting the imperial court. It's not always possible to determine exactly where each person in the mural came from, but it's clear that many foreign delegations came to the Tang court for trade, diplomacy, gifts, or military agreements. For Wu Zetian, diplomacy was important. She did not avoid using military force, but she also used ambassadors, treaties, tribute, and relationships with neighboring states. In 692, her forces regained the important Tang position in the Tarim Basin. This was important because that region was traversed by routes connecting China and Central Asia. When the government controlled the oases, roads, and military posts, it was easier to protect the caravans. This did not make the Silk Road completely safe. There was still danger from bandits, war, local rebellions, and extreme weather. But the stronger Tang presence helped keep trade and communication alive. In Chang'an, there were two main markets. The East Market was closer to officials and wealthy families. The West Market, on the other hand, was more known for foreign merchants and imported products. There you could buy food, textiles, metal, medicine, leather, and writing materials. There were warehouses, canals, bridges, and roads that carts traveled on. Archaeologists even found traces of wheels on the ground. The government also strictly monitored the prices, measurements, opening hours, and orderliness of the market. Through the Silk Road, grapes, sesame, spices, glassware, gemstones, and musical instruments arrived in China. So it didn't just enrich the imperial treasury, it also changed the food, fashion, music, art, religion, and daily lives of the people. Wu Zetian was not the one who started the Silk Road. It had already existed long before he was born. But during his reign, the government maintained and strengthened the important route for trade, diplomacy, and security. Along with the influx of wealth into the capital, the imperial court also used architecture to display its power. One of the biggest symbols of this was the Daming Palace. Wu was not the first to build it. It was started during the reign of Emperor Taizong and expanded during the reign of Emperor Gaozong. In 663, the imperial court moved there. Since Wu was already actively participating in the government, this became an important place in her political life. The entire complex was enormous. There were spacious courtyards, ceremonial halls, government offices, residences, gardens, and areas for sports and entertainment. The Danfeng Gate was the large southern entrance. It was designed to be tall and wide so that anyone entering would immediately feel the power of the emperor. You still had to pass through vast open spaces before reaching the main halls. The message was simple. An individual is small in the face of the empire. One of the most important buildings there was the Hanyuan Hall, where grand ceremonies and receptions for foreign envoys were held. There was also the Lindy Hall, which was used for banquets, diplomatic meetings, and receptions, as well as musical and dance performances. This was not just for show. It was a political strategy. When visitors were impressed by the size of the palace and the wealth of the court, the message that this was the center of power in Tang, China, became even stronger. It was also easier to persuade other states to trade, send tribute, or avoid conflict. The palace was not just a simple home for the emperor. This is where laws, taxes, military campaigns, appointment of officials, foreign relations, and food supply were discussed. This is also where news from distant provinces and borders arrived. Inside the complex, you can see the two faces of Wu Zetian's leadership. On one hand, there was strict control and fear directed at political enemies. On the other hand, there was a government connected to other countries, earning from trade, accepting foreign culture, and able to maintain a massive center of power. This doesn't mean that every part of China was rich and peaceful, but it's clear that his era did not bring only disaster. The excavated jewelry, imported materials, markets, murals, and palace foundations show a more complicated reality. China during the time of Wu Zetian was a strong, wealthy, and internationally connected empire, and she used trade, diplomacy, the military, and architecture to show that she was truly at the center of power. Daming Palace was not only enormous, its location was also unique. The former imperial palace was located in the center of the northern part of Chang'an, following the traditional layout of the capital. But Daming Palace was built outside the old city wall. For Wu Zetian, it became the new center of her power. Here, she could leave behind her image as a former low-ranking concubine and present herself as the true leader of a powerful empire. But Wu knew that a grand palace was not enough. She also needed the support of ordinary citizens. One of her strongest weapons was Buddhism. Many Chinese people during that time followed this religion. Aside from this, Buddhism was more open to the idea of a woman having high spiritual and political authority compared to the traditional Confucian system. Wu used Buddhist teachings to show that her rule had the blessing of heaven. She supported the construction and restoration of temples, pagodas, and statues and the translation of sacred Buddhist texts. One of the buildings associated with her is the Great Wild Goose Pagoda in Chang'an. It was first built in 652 to house the Buddhist scriptures brought from India by the monk Xuanzang. When the original structure was destroyed, it was rebuilt during the time of Wu Zetian. It was made taller and more impressive so it could be seen from distant parts of the city. Its exact original height is uncertain, but it's clear that it was one of the largest Buddhist buildings of its time. Wu's connection to the Longmen Grotto in Luoyang is even clearer. The entire place has thousands of Buddhist figures carved into caves in the mountainside. The largest of these is the Bairoka Virukana Buddha, which stands over 56 feet tall. The Bairoka Virukana represents the light and power that reaches throughout the world. Wu gave significant support in the creation of this monument. There has long been a belief that the face of the statue was modeled after the face of Wu Zetian, but there is still not enough evidence to prove this. What is certain is that she used the project to connect her rule with the power and wisdom of Buddhism. Religion was not the only reason why she remained in power. Wu also understood that it is difficult to rule a country when the people and soldiers are hungry. Inside Luoyang, the government used large granaries to store grain brought from other regions through rivers and canals. The grain was placed in deep and large storage pits. It was carefully covered to prevent water, air, rats, and insects from getting in easily. This supply could be used for the salaries and food of officials and soldiers. It could also be distributed when harvests were poor, prices were high, or there was a disaster. Wu was not the first ruler to use state granaries. This kind of system had long been a part of the Chinese government. But during her reign, Luoyang was important as a political and supply center. The large food granaries helped support the capital, the military, and the government during times of need. She also couldn't fully rely on the old aristocratic families. Many of them opposed having a female emperor. So Wu expanded the search for capable officials outside the traditional elite. She gave greater importance to the imperial examinations and personal abilities. Because of this, more educated men from families without strong connections to the court had the opportunity to enter the government. The system was not open to everyone. Money and education were still needed to prepare for the exams, but this helped reduce the control of some powerful clans and allowed Wu to form a new group of officials who depended more directly on her. Several women rose to power in her court, most notably Chang'an. Her father and grandfather were punished after opposing Wu, and Chang'an grew up as a palace servant, but her skills in writing, literature, and government affairs were noticed. Even when other women opposed her, she endured. To survive the imperial orders, she played a major role in court politics, which is why modern writers call her the female prime minister. But that wasn't her official title. It's more accurate to say she was a powerful advisor, writer, and palace official with direct access to the ruler. Her rise shows that Wu was willing to use talent, even if it came from a woman or from a family that was once her enemy. But that doesn't mean that all women were equal. Some women during the Tang period had more freedom in clothing, business, travel, marriage, and participation in public life compared to other times. But most of the government, property, and family were still controlled by men. It's safer to say that the presence of Wu and women like Chang'an expanded the visible role of women in the court. After Wu's time, the succeeding rulers tried to restore male control. Chang'an's tomb was discovered in 2013. Part of it was deliberately destroyed, but it's not certain who exactly ordered it or when the destruction actually happened. Her epitaph shows that her life was more complicated than the old stories. She was not just someone who blindly followed Wu or other rulers. She also had her own political position and reportedly tried several times to stop the dangerous power struggles. However, Wu's successes could not erase the bloody parts of her rule. She used informants, secret police, investigations, exile, and executions against suspected enemies. Many members of the royal family and aristocracy died in political conflicts during her time. There are also stories linking her to the death of her granddaughter, Princess Yongtai. According to some old history books, the princess, her husband, and her sibling were punished after they criticized Wu's close favorites. But the epitaph on the princess's tomb suggests otherwise. It's possible that she died due to a difficult pregnancy or childbirth, so it can't be confirmed that she was poisoned on Wu's orders. Ancient sources contradict each other, and there isn't enough evidence to confirm the killing. This is the most difficult part of analyzing Wu Zetian. It's not right to immediately accept every cruel story about her, but it's also not right to make her out to be just an innocent victim of history. She really used violence to protect her position. Many male emperors did the same thing, but this doesn't make her actions acceptable. As she grew older, the court became more chaotic. The brothers Zhang Yiji and Zhang Changzong, who were close to Wu, gained significant influence. Many officials believed that they were using their relationship with the elderly emperor to control appointments and government decisions. Meanwhile, the conflict continued between the supporters of Wu's Zhou dynasty and those who wanted to restore the Tang royal family. There is also evidence that seeking spiritual forgiveness was important to her. In 700, she had a small gold tablet made and sent it to Mount Song, one of the sacred mountains of China. Written on it was a request for her sins to be forgiven. The tablet was found by a farmer more than 1,200 years later. This is the only known personal item from Wu Zetian that has been found with a clear inscription directly referring to her. We don't know if she was truly repentant or if this was part of a public religious ceremony, but it's clear that she wanted to show that she acknowledged herself as a person with sins that needed to be forgiven. As her body grew weaker, her enemies grew stronger. In 705, a group of high-ranking officials and generals entered the palace. They killed the Zhang brothers and forced Wu to return the throne to her son, Zhongzong. She formally abdicated the throne. This was not a completely voluntary abdication. This happened after she lost the ability to resist the coup. She was already over 80 years old at that time. Just a few months later, she died. The Tang dynasty was restored, and Wu was buried together with her husband, Emperor Gaozong, in the Shenling Mausoleum. The mausoleum complex is large and was built around a mountain. Along the road leading to the tomb, there are statues of soldiers, officials, animals, and foreign envoys. These statues show the extent of the connections and influence of the empire they once ruled. There is one thing there that became the most famous symbol of Wu Zetian, a large stone monument with no official inscription of praise on its front. It is called the Wordless Stele. There are different explanations as to why it was left blank. She may have believed that words were not enough to describe her achievements. He may have left it to the next generation to judge him. It's also possible that his family couldn't agree on how to describe a woman who took the title of emperor and temporarily replaced the Tang dynasty. We can't be sure which is the real reason, but the silence of the monument suits her. Wu Zetian is not a simple hero, nor is she a simple villain. She was a skilled politician who used religion, trade, food supply, government reform, propaganda, and military power to strengthen the empire. She gave opportunities to talented people who did not belong to the most powerful families. She also showed that a woman can lead in a system made for men, but at the same time she used fear and violence against people who might stand in her way. More than 1,300 years after her death, her monument remains blank. Not because there is nothing to say about her, but because there are so many conflicting truths in her life to fit into a single judgment.